Hey guys, this is Brad Duck reaching out to you. And as promised, I promised you I would be doing hardware today. Yes, this is the really most difficult motherboard I've ever worked with, but if it works, wow. So, we're going to talk about the ASUS B250 Mining Expert i9 quality class motherboard. Now, I have dealt with a lot of motherboards, big ones, small ones, you name it. I mean, let me give you an example. Okay, so here is an example of a motherboard. Okay, now this is a 4U, 8U style size motherboard. It's a Dell platform, and I have worked with a lot of these things. And let me tell you, if you're really good at motherboards, the B250 is pretty cool. But I'll explain why. Okay, so I showed you that giant motherboard, right? Which I had to take a second and put that away. But this little guy, he is quite different. Now, if you look closely, you'll see why. Do you see him? That's a lot of them, aren't there? And it has power assist as well. So you got these PCIe ones, all of them. Notice how they are set up. They usually would represent either an 8 or a 16, or the full slot, or a couple of the ones, and so on and so on. And as you look at this motherboard, it's not very featured. Okay, and it only has 2 slots in it for memory, but it can go up to 64 gigs. And of course, there's the back end plate, and let me flip that over so you can see the template style on the baseboard. And it's basically really designed to do one thing, and that is to mine. Yeah. So what does that entail? Well, give me a second and I'll go get what you need. So this is what you need. This is a 16-bit, this is a PCI 16X. It's a full slot for a VGA card. For a GeForce class, probably I would say a 1070 video card. And it has this little guy right here. Now we'll take this guy off of this configuration. And this little 1X, PCI 1X, we're going to put it on the motherboard. So this will now make sense to you. As you can see, there it is with the USB output. The cable connection goes to this, and it will run up to the card interface through a proprietary, this is important, through a proprietary pre-wired set wire. In other words, you got to buy this wire with this unit as a complete set. Do not use regular USB cables A to A's. You'll burn it up. Trust me. Been there, done that. And of course, here you'll see the power output requirements, either through standard MUX or through a MULX connection. And it's got a power output here as well. It requires both. And this will be very important because this guy goes into the bottom of your video card as follows. And here's a 1080 right here. And I put this guy on as follows. And you're done. Now, as you can see here, if you're into crypto mining, this means you can free the video card away from the motherboard completely and put it into a cryptocurrency chest. This all sounds great, right? So why did I say this is a tough motherboard? Because of what they're not telling you. That's the key detail. You see, these little guys, they're being clock divided on the buses. Now, it doesn't make sense initially what I'm saying until you look at the design of the motherboard itself. Look what they did. They actually isolated the channels and put how many PCI slots you could put in on individual true bus slots. Now, this isn't quite true. This is actually 1, this is 2, this is 3, possibly 3.5 in my opinion. And this is why this motherboard, even though it can do i9 and down, is such a pain in the butt. If you know what you're doing and you do your math correctly and you correctly populate the PCI ones crosswise and avoid the outer edges, then this system will not freeze up on you. That's what my discovery is. I had to go through 2 of these motherboards to figure out, I see what's happening. The design is functional, but its implementation is flawed. So if you try to populate the full set here, like most people do, and they walk through the buses, they're actually causing what we call a subdivision effect timeout. And that timeout can literally stop the motherboard. And the BIOS isn't written that well, so you have to really, really, really reset the BIOS when it gets like this. Then the motherboard goes back to normal again. Now, could you just put a simple video card in this, 232 gig sticks for 64 gigs and just use it as a normal machine? Yeah, but why? Because look at the power connectors. You see that? That's significant. All right, not only that, but you have them down here too. This is a motherboard designed to mine. And it's not for the faint of heart. You really have to be patient with this motherboard. And when my son finally decided he wasn't going to do encrypted mining anymore and left it in my hands, I decided, well, I'm going to retire these systems because it doesn't take much to cause these guys to freeze up. And of course, you purge the BIOS and force it to reset and it comes back to life and everything's good again. But why? I'd rather use more standardized motherboards for more functionalized products. But does this board work? Yes. Is it picky? Yes. Is it complicated? Very much so, because you really have to think out how you're doing your PCI bus extraction sets and so they work. So this is going into my pile to sell. So some cryptographic guy wants to have, this particular strategy board that can do, let's see, 3, 6, 8, 9, 12, 15, 19 video cards. I say go for it. And, once you got it working, it's good. But of all the system boards I've taken out, this is the first motherboard I actively sought to remove from my environment because I just really dread, and that's the problem, I really dreaded having to take out the motherboard assembly and everything, and just to get this to work correctly. And it's a kind of a pain in the butt. So I actively said, okay, I'm not doing cryptographic stuff anymore. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this guy. And I kept the box and everything. I'm going to sell it to some entrepreneur person who wants to learn how to do crypto mining and have some fun, which, trust me, it's going to give you lots of fun. I promise you that much. All right, so this is my hardware presentation. The other thing I was going to bring up to you as well is you're going to hear some hype on the nature of encryption that's coming out, and it's called clock dividing. Clock dividing is kind of tricking your PCI bus to kind of do what this board does. Advice, don't do it. My suggestion is you go with what's called a full-size PCIe motherboard, and which will have up to 6 or 7 slots in it, and they're properly brought out and they're properly clock divided to work on the PCI buses correctly. The other kind of things you're seeing out there, the jury rigging and so on, is happening because the motherboard market is kind of fully saturated and it doesn't have much future development. So they're looking for caveats and spins to try to sell you something that, oh, look at this next, whiz bang, chuck tool we're going to throw into the equation. Instead of streamlining and better improving how their systems are to make them really rock and roll, they mess them up. I won't say the company's name. I think ASUS. Yeah. Anyways, new topic. So all in all, it's important to understand that there is an edge of mining on motherboards, and there's a good solid standard. I always gravitate to the standard, even though it may truly look too good to be true, and technically it was able to do what it said it could do. It just kind of teeters on the edge, if you know what I mean. And that's never good if you're going to try to make a living at cryptocurrency. So with that being said, now the other thing I was going to suggest you to know is that the 2070 series and 2080 series cards are probably the most pragmatic when it comes to the ratio versus return. Yes, the 40s and the 3000s and all of that, but there's a lot of other issues there on that front that I've been kind of weary of. I've seen wonderful results with the 10 series and the 20 series, but the 30 and 40, touch and go. It's very very optimistic in nature of them trying to squeeze just a little bit more to get you to pay a whole hell of a lot more in money. And that's, in my opinion, wrong. So this is Brad Dyke signing off. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I touch base on some of these things. The next thing I'm going to be talking to on the hardware side is the Shy storage cryptocurrency stuff. And I've closed that chapter down as well. I'm going to sell those disk arrays and get rid of those and a little bit more. But for now, God bless. I'll let you go. Bye-bye.